We actually said earlier, Kristin, that it used to be Bitcoin maybe had what we would think of as a higher delta than maybe equities. Now it looks like it's, at least in recent months, it's calmed down a bit, and it seems like it's been relatively stable around 19,000 to just over 20,000. Is that how you see it, or are we starting another leg down here today?
Yeah, no, listen, I think Bitcoin has been largely stable for a couple of reasons. One, you have the retail investor that has largely exited investing in Bitcoin, as Frank was talking about before. People are worried about paying for gas. They're worried about paying for groceries. They don't have the ability to put extra money away by investing in Bitcoin at the moment. But I do think that the investors that are in there right now are holding out for a future date. They're in it for the long run, and that I think as we start to see the economy turn around and people putting more risk into their investment portfolios, we're going to see the investment in Bitcoin rise and subsequently the price.
What kind of legislation do you foresee, and would any legislation at all be a positive, or does it matter what finally comes down the pike?
Yeah, no, listen, I think what's really interesting right now is that Congress is actually actively working on legislation that would provide additional regulation for the underlying digital commodity spot market, so including the Bitcoin spot market. And this actually has a real chance of getting done before the end of the year. The chair and ranking member of the Senate Agriculture Committee has introduced the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act, the DCCPA. And this is a pretty good framework for regulating centralized exchanges in the spot markets. There is one outstanding issue around decentralized finance. These are software protocols that operate completely differently than custodial centralized exchanges. But that's an issue that's being worked out. I'm optimistic we'll come to a good resolution there. But yeah, I think there's a decent chance we could see legislation signed into law before the end of the year. You
feel real good about the integrity of the individual chains themselves? When we have seen hacks or sort of that activity, it's usually between chains, isn't it?
Yeah, no, a lot of the hacks we've seen have been on, the bridges between two chains. I think that, it really depends on what you're looking at, right? If you have something like Ethereum that, there's a ton of development there. It's been around for a long time. There's a lot of developers that are looking at the code, making improvements to the code. That is going to be much more stable than, a newer chain where there has been, less chance to inspect the code, to do audits and look at the underlying code base. I do think this is one of the reasons why having regulation of the centralized spot markets would be positive, because there would be disclosures that would be offered by those listing the exchange, so that investors will have better information about what they're looking at. All of that information is publicly available today. These are open source networks. It's all out there. But distilling it into something that's meaningful investors, I think, would be an important step forward.